This right here is the latest electric dirt bike that has been flooding our algorithms and being pushed by many a YouTuber. I mean, point proven, Exhibit A. But how's it built? What's driving it? And what should you know more about? Let's find out the good, that was easy, the bad, I hope that's not a problem, and the straight up evil about the HeyBike Villain. This is worse than I thought. And I want to start by just ripping this thing to pieces because there's no better way to see how the sausage is made than by unmaking the sausage. That's a horrible way of putting things, but I'm just gonna take parts off and see what's inside. We can start with the seat here, which is actually tool-free. It uses this little wing nut right here at the bottom to secure it in place, but make sure you tighten this appropriately when you're taking it on and off because you'd hate to have this rattle loose and just lose it mid-ride. By the way, if you're liking this bike and you want to get one yourself, I got a discount code for you. It gets $100 off if you use code LexDFox. Helps you and it helps me. Now let's take a look at this controller. So this gives us a really good look at the controller here. It's an interesting layout. So the controller is sitting on the top here with the battery underneath it. Typically with these bikes, you'll see the controller fit more in the front here and more access to the battery around here, but I guess we'll get into that a little bit later. It looks like it is a far driver. Surprise, surprise, almost all of these are. I'm having trouble getting the big camera in here, but I took a picture of it with my phone. I'll put it up on the screen, and this model is an LC5280A, so that means 52 volts and 80 amps line current and up to 260 phase. But the interesting thing here is that this explicitly states 52 volts only, which I've never seen before on a far driver. Usually these things can run anywhere between 48 and 72 volts. Now that's a little annoying because that means if I want to be able to slap a bigger battery like a 72 volt into this thing, that means I can't get away with just tweaking this one. I actually have to go and replace it. Although this only runs like 80 amps line current, so maybe I just have to replace it anyway. I'm sure you would too. Again, kind of interesting layout here with the controller on top. Like I mentioned earlier, they're typically on the side here, and that makes it easy to get the battery because then you just take off this seat and you'll be able to pull it out from the top. A lot of my bikes do that, but in this case, we don't have that luxury. So it makes me think that because the controller is not in the front, that's where the battery actually gets pulled out. It looks like there are a couple of brackets right here, so maybe it just kind of slides out, and in which case, does that mean I have to get the front tire off of this thing? I don't know. Let's keep pulling off some more plastics. So HeyBike does state on their website that they plan to sell different colored plastics to customize your ride, so I'm hoping that these are pretty easy to take off. Ah, they're all over the place. Well, to quote the late great Staples, that was easy, albeit just a little bit finicky. So I think it's pretty cool that HeyBike's gonna be rolling out additional plastics that not only change out the graphics of this thing, or at least add some more graphics to it, but the color as well. But there's one thing that I'm gonna point out that I saw in Mr. Central Driver's video when he introduced the HeyBike Villain on his channel, which is this. What are you gonna do with this swing arm? I mean, everything else is black and this is painted yellow as opposed to the plastics that come off of it. So when they're rolling out these new plastics, are they also gonna be rolling out swing arm covers? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Otherwise, all the colors will just have to make do with a yellow rear end. I'm also noticing that the master clip on this bike is put on backwards. That means the prongs are actually facing forward with the motion of the drivetrain. Now you don't want that because if the prongs are facing forward and it catches something, then it might actually pop itself off and you could lose your chain. We definitely don't want that. So while I'm tearing everything down, I'm also gonna take off this master clip and flip it around the way it's supposed to be. But that's all for later. Let's continue with pulling off some stuff and see if we can get these brackets out of the way so we can find a way to actually pull this battery out. A lot of metal came out with that first screw. I hope that's not a problem. All right, so now we got the metal bracket off of this thing. It's pretty beefy too, which I appreciate. That means that it's going to withstand anything that this front tire is gonna fling at it. But now, with that out of the way, we can actually get this battery out. And I also disconnected the battery. On the back side is the battery connection. You can see it where the plastic panel covers. It's really easy to get to and it has this little lever. You just pull it up, pop it off, pretty simple. Now I think we can just push everything, wiggle it out. It is a tight fit in here. And see if we can't get this fully out of the frame. There it goes. Okay, so it does hit the tire, but I think we can get away with just turning it. Is that enough? Oh, it's a squeeze. There we go. Okay, I thought that was gonna be a lot worse than it was. Now that we have this battery pack out of here, we can actually put one of the myths to rest on this bike, and something that I've seen in a lot of the comment sections of videos on the HeyBike Villain, saying that this isn't actually a 52 volt, this is really a 48 volt that's just advertised as 4 extra volts. But no, you can see the range on this thing goes from 40 all the way up to 58, which is typical for a 52 volt pack. A 48 volt pack would have a range more like 39 to 55, 56. I know it's not a lot going from 48 to 52, but it is actually a 52 volt. I guess it just has like 1 extra battery cell. And also, talking about the construction of this battery pack, it is built really well. It's got a nice metal cage, it's pretty sturdy, it's nice and well proportioned too, so I think it would be pretty easy to get these dimensions and maybe get a custom battery made for this thing. Who knows? But now we can take a look at what's underneath the battery tray, which is the motor here, and this thing is huge for this size of bike. It is a chonker, and I'm hoping that means that this thing can put down some serious power when you tune this thing, but there's no obvious indication as to what this is. It actually does look suspiciously similar to the one in the Alpha Pro. I also don't 100% know what that is. I think it's some variant of a QS. It's got the same gearing anyway. It's got 11 in the front, 60 in the rear, so the exact same gear ratio, so it might make sense that this is actually the same motor. Now we got the bike stripped down, or at least as far as I want to go, but that gives us a great chance to look at the frame of this thing and just look at it. It's beautiful. Not only that, but it looks really, really well built. It's a tubular frame, which is really rigid. It's got really thick tubes at that. All the welds look really good, and it just feels solid. I mean, this thing is definitely beefy enough to handle your 10-year-old, and probably beefy enough to handle whatever the hell you want to put this thing through and more. I mean, it's weird to say, but it's almost kind of a shame putting the battery back in and all the plastics on this frame that hides everything, but let's go ahead and take care of that.
Yeah, good looking frame, but there's no shame in putting it back together. Speak no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. All I see is villains. It's going so well. Wait, why is he looking at me like that?
Hang on, we gotta stop this time lapse because there's something pretty crucial that I just found out, and I feel like I'm getting gaslit by my own plastics. Let me take a step back here and explain what I mean when I say gaslit. So particularly with this top plastic piece here, it's in a very unique shape, and obviously it fits in the frame in a pretty specific way, right? And there's no bolts in right now. It fits almost perfectly. However, you can see that this hole is almost fitting. I mean, it just needs to go up a little bit, no big worry. Also good, but look at that one. It's like halfway over to the left. Also halfway over to the left. And this one is nowhere to be found. It's actually above it right here. You can just see the bottom of it. If that's not evidence enough, take a look at this front mount. It is mangled, and I've only screwed it in once. I did not do that. I hate to keep harping on this, but it was actually kind of a joke in the intro when I was saying if we found out the evil, but this is that evil because this side of the plastics were even worse. But whatever, rant over, at least the seat is pretty easy to put back on. However, you might have been looking at this bike and thinking, there's something different, maybe a couple of things different, because these aren't silver anymore, they're black now, and there's a good reason for that. Because these silver ones out of the box just feel like there's nothing in them except a spring. There's no rebound damping. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's no fluid in these things, but I have a lot of spare parts laying around, and I have a set of Mototech forks laying around that I think will fit the triple clamps of this bike perfectly, and I know for a fact that that one has fluid in it, and it even has a little upgrade that I've done previously. Look at the height difference there. HeyBike versus Mototech, and this is the Mototech 60 volt. That's why this one's so low. I don't know why it is, but the 60 volt has like 2 inches less of travel in the front than the 48 volt or than the Tudio or than any other fork that uses this style, which is 3942, I think. I mean, if it lowers it, fine, I don't care, as long as it dampens. All right, let's see if this is any better. Definitely sitting a little stink buggy, but whatever. If it works, it works. Still a little springy, so I don't know if that really solved all that much, but it feels more damped. Let's try a drop test. Doesn't bounce. It sticks to the ground. I don't know, we'll have to try it out, but I don't know if we solved it just yet. So while straight swapping those forks didn't do much, I guess the only difference between this and the Mototech is that the Mototech is just a little bit shorter. Maybe we can stiffen these things up with what I call the fork mod. So if you want to go about doing this, one of the things that I recommend doing first is actually loosening the top bolt on your forks. But there's a good way to do that by keeping it in the bike. So I have it in the triple clamp here, and if you keep it in the triple clamp, it's not going to move around as you loosen it. But make sure that you have the bottom one as tight as possible, but loosen the top one, because that is where the threads are on the inside of that nut. And if you're trying to loosen that while this is tight, you're gonna strip those threads. So now that it is actually loosened, you can get this on a clamp or on a table, something upright, where you can actually be able to loosen this thing off and then slide the whole fork tube down so we can see what's underneath and if we can improve it. Oh, okay. This is worse than I thought. Let me bring you in a little closer so you can see what I mean. Extreme close up. So this is an inside look, at least the top portion of your fork tube. This is the top nut right here, and it's connected to this inner rod, which goes down and pushes on the spring, which gives you your suspension. And this is what I was worried about, because there's no locking nut on this fork tube, which means that this top nut is tightened down as much as possible, probably bottomed out on the threads of this inner rod, which means that this is gonna be really hard to get off because there's no good way to clamp on this. You want to make sure that this isn't marred at all, and it doesn't really lend to the modification that I was thinking about doing. Let me actually close this up and put on the Mototech fork so I can show you exactly what I mean and show you the modification that I did earlier. So as you're looking at this, I'm pretty sure you can spot the difference, but this right here, this piece is the modification that I was referring to. This is actually a ram mount. It's basically just a thread extension, more or less, but Ram sells one, and it's the perfect thread, perfect pitch for the inner tube of the Mototech forks. What this does essentially is just add some length on the inner rod right here, which basically adds preload, more pressure on the spring down below, so it gives you a stiffer feel. So unfortunately, the HeyBike Villain's forks aren't as modifiable as the Mototech's here, but we did prove that you could just straight swap the entire fork from a Mototech 60 volt or 48 volt, which means you could also swap it from a Tudio or any other kind of modified version of those bikes, which I highly recommend doing, by the way, because the Villain's forks are so soft to begin with that it really needs those stiffer springs up front. Why don't we talk about features on this bike? Because like I mentioned in my first video, this bike actually has features that are worth talking about when it comes to electric dirt bikes, so let's see them in a little bit more detail. The first thing is not necessarily a feature, but something just to highlight is the screen that this thing has, which almost all bikes these days seem to have. I mean, it's the exact same on my Alpha Pro, which is the same as the Yasma, which is the same as the Valtinzu, which is probably the same as something else that I'm forgetting to mention. It's got a lot of information. The biggest numbers, of course, are the mile an hour, but you could switch this to kilometers if you really wanted to. Right here, it shows your speed modes, and yes, it shows 0 through 3, but I actually know how to fix this, so I'll show you that in a little bit. And then we got some data on the bottom here, which can be toggled with using the M button, so it defaults to the odometer, but you can see your trip, average speed, maximum speed, voltage, and the time that the bike has been on, if you wanted to know that. So let me show you how to get rid of this pesky 0 default speed, so at least you can get going on the bike without having to hit the plus button a few times. So you hit plus and minus and hold it until you see P00. This is where you can change a couple of different settings, but for this specific one, you hit the M button a few times until you get to P05. So you can see the numbers flashing 0 to 3 right here. That's the current range of gears that it's gonna provide you. But if you hit the minus button once, you can change that 0 to a 1, so now you have 1 through 3. And then just let it sit for a little bit so it goes to the default screen. Now you can turn this off, turn it back on. Now it's a 1. I glossed over this in my first video, but there is a headlight button right here, so you can click that, get some lights. And actually, if you just barely touch it, you can also flash if you really wanted to, but simple enough. But I do wish that this bike came with a taillight, or better yet, a taillight brake light combo out of the box with this thing, because it is capable of doing it. It has a headlight, so the wiring is there, and I feel like this bike is more street oriented than off-road oriented, and it would make more sense to have a brake light taillight on the street. Then there's the reverse mode. This bike actually has a reverse. There's an R button on the handlebar. You just tap it and then you can go backwards slowly. So as interesting and unique of a feature that is, I don't see myself ever using it because this bike is pretty light to begin with. It's only like 120 pounds, give or take, so it's pretty easy to just lift, flip, and get to where you're going. Speaking of turning around, one of the other things that the HeyBike here is plagued with is turning angle. When you turn the handlebars to the fully locked position, it's not as far as some of the other bikes. So to demonstrate that, we're gonna do a turning test. We'll start with the bike up against a single point on the garage door, and then with it fully locked and as perpendicular as possible, we're gonna move it along the floor till it gets to a piece of tape. Then we'll mark where that front tire hits, and then we'll compare that to all of the other bikes, including the Alpha Pro. This one is plagued with it as well, the RTR, and the Mototech 60 volt. And the results in bringing up the rear, it is the Alpha Pro, but in a very, very close second to last, the HeyBike Villain, and then there is a bit of a gap. Second place goes to the RTR, and the winner is the Mototech 60 volt. And now down to the last feature, which I think is the most important of all, is the magnetic kill switch. And a lot of people have been commenting about this, saying that it's actually a security feature, because now that I have this off, I can get off the bike, leave it here, and then there's no thief that's gonna come up and steal my bike because it's not gonna move. But I think the key word in magnetic kill switch is magnet, because what if the thief has something like this? I pulled it off my fridge. Because yes, the thief could walk up to this thing, hit the throttle, and get a bunch of errors, but in fact, I don't even think you need a magnet to get this thing going. I think you just need a piece of steel, like this drywall screw, for example. Yep, or this paint can. Or heck, even one of the wrenches that the bike came with. So for those of you thinking it's a security feature and you can just walk away from your bike, take the keys with you. On the plus side, if you lose your lanyard, it's not the end of the world. Well, since this bike has a far driver, why not take a look at the tune? So I added this little Bluetooth dongle. You're gonna have to get your own if you don't have one. I'll link one in the description below, but I was able to take off the seat and fish through the wiring at the top there and found the exact plug that plugs into this, and now we're ready to connect. So we got the far driver app. I'll also link this down below where you can find it, but we turn on the bike, and then if we go to communication, we'll see it listed right here. It's UON QUFOC and some numbers. We're gonna hit that and hit connect. It says it's connected. We're gonna tap that and it's gonna ask to bound it. So we're gonna bound it to this specific app. That way we can actually see the tune and make changes. And now I believe if we go over to parameters and Pro NBLE, we should be able to see all the dirty details. And indeed we do. We can see some of the obvious parameters first. The rated voltage, of course, 52 volts. It looks like it's rated for 2000 watts of power. Max speed is limited to 4800 RPM. We could probably tweak that. And the max line current here is listed at 70 amps, but we know that the controller here is capable of 80, so we could add just 10 more amps to get just that little bit of extra power. And since I'm in here, why not? The max phase current is the maximum on the controller, which is 260 amps. And let's see the ratios in speed. This one is tapering off pretty quickly. This is similar to what I saw with the Alpha Pro. So these things are set up with a pretty safe tune. So we can definitely add some things to this. Okay, now this is interesting because this bike is advertised as having regen braking. But if you actually look at the parameters and see the energy regenerate section, it's at 0% for every single RPM, which means there is no energy regen. Yeah, even more damning, if you scroll down to functions at the very bottom, there's a section that's called follow, and that specifically is the one that tells it to turn on regen, and it is disabled at the moment. Looks like you got caught with your pants down, HeyBike. There's some other random stuff like display and protection things. None of that really matters as far as tunability goes, but it's interesting to see what's actually in this thing and that there is definitely some potential in this to be added into so that we can get some more top speed and some more acceleration and some more fun.
Well, let's see what 10 extra amps gets us. We got the exact same stretch, and we're just gonna hit it till we get to the end of the road and see what that top speed is. The acceleration still feels pretty smooth, pretty gradual, but we're already at 45, 46, 47, 48.
But remember, there's a discrepancy with this. Even though that this said 48 miles an hour, that's not what we actually did. Last time it said 45 and change, and we went 39 miles an hour. So let's see what we actually did, which was 42 miles an hour. So really, we gained 3 miles an hour top speed with just one change in the parameters, just changing from 70 amps to 80 amps. That's not bad. So what do you think? Now we've seen the good, the bad, and the very ugly with the HeyBike Villain. If you're still interested in getting one of these, by the way, I highly recommend using my discount code LexDefox. Get you $100 off. See ya.